Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever the broadcast may find you. Welcome to Wisdom of the Word. I am the Apostle Lowell Green. It's an honor and privilege once again to come into your place of residence or business, that wherever you may be viewing this telecast. Before I go any further, I want us to remember those who are in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene that suffer life-changing events in their lives. There are folks needing the help of their fellow citizens of the United States, regardless where you at in this country. Folks in Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, especially in the western part of North Carolina, suffered life-changing events. I try not to mix politics with the Lord's work, but it saddens my heart to see the things that are taking place and where our government is not at this time, helping the citizens, the naturally born citizens of the United States, to get some resemblance of their life back. And so I solicit the prayers of this nation. Those of you who may view this broadcast, take a moment to lift up your voice unto heaven and pray for our brothers and sisters who stand in need of. I have two more of episode in the series called the Kingdom Parables. The Kingdom Parable, things that Jesus spoke about and taught. And I am directly looking at these individuals' parables, and I'm gleaming from it, hopefully, some new revelation that those of you who are viewing or listening can understand how it applies to our life as of today. And so the 7-part episode, now we're at 6. This is called the Vineyard Worker. The Vineyard Worker. I don't know about you, my brother and sister, but have you ever convinced yourself that you were going to receive some type of reward that you just knew that you deserved? Perhaps a promotion on your job for being there always on time and there when they need you. You stay late to help out, to make sure that orders and orders are met and shipped out on time. And you just been doing this and you have not asked for anything, but you were hoping when the word came down that they're looking for positions or looking for a person to fill a position, and you just knew that I should be the person for that job. And when you discover that thing wasn't going to happen the way you thought it would, some people self-destruct. I'll use that word, self-destruct. They become bitter, angry, resentful, feeling that they were owed that position because of what they went out and do. In other words, we build up our expectation with the belief that something is owed to us. I'm looking at a country with lots of individuals thinking that someone owed them something. And they really believe that they owe it because they have earned it, or their ancestors have went through so much that it is deserving upon that particular race that they should get this. However, sometimes the merit exists only in one's own eye. This type of assumption that something is owed to us often set us up for a great disappointment. In Matthew Gospel, chapter 19, verse 27, Peter is asking Jesus a question. And that reveals that he was being something that he was thinking along these lines. In the 27th verse of the 19th chapter of Matthew, it says that then answered Peter and said unto him, Behold, we have forgotten all. Give me a chance. I'm trying to get my mind together. We have forsaken all and followed thee. What shall we have thereof or therefore? In other words, well, Peter's saying that, hey, you came along and you told us to come and follow you, and we did. Now, what are we going to get out of this? All right. Here, Brother Peter said, Lord, I'm giving up so much to follow you. We've forsaken all and to come and to follow you. We have given up great sacrifice of ourselves. So what therefore shall be our reward? Now, many people, like Peter, think this way, that the sacrifice of the original 12 or the first follower of Jesus is worthy of a greater reward than those who came to follow Jesus later. You see, come on. They were Jesus' first people who came they may not have believed fully, but they knew there was something different about this man that caused them to give up their lifestyle and to follow this man because there was just something about Jesus. They were Jesus. They were there with Jesus before it was cool to follow Jesus. They were with Jesus before the miracle. They were with Jesus before the crowds. They were with Jesus before all the public attention. They had followed him when no one else did. These 12 men forsake everything that they had before it was popular to follow Jesus. Now that's everyone in this story perhaps might have felt the way Peter did, but they didn't say anything, but they were thinking the same thing. They thought there would be some extra level or reward for them. This day, this parable is part of Jesus' answer to that question Peter placed to him. It began with the iconic phrase that every parable we have and are studying in this series start with, for the kingdom of heaven is like. For the kingdom of heaven is like. Let me just pause here for a second. Many of you know someone in your family, in your circle of influence, may think this way, may be reacting to something because they feel that they are entitled. They feel that if even God owes them something for maybe the condition of their life, the people who bore them into this world was not the best of parents, or a mother who her waywardness, I'll believe it that like that, her waywardness caused her to have multiple children out of wedlock. That male who sire so many children, thinking that that's make him something of a super stud, because he have fathers many of children and with many of women. For the kingdom of heaven is like. Many folks love whooping and hollering preachers to entertain them, but the ones like myself and others who teach and who directly speak to your intelligence, as well as trying to speak to your heart, to get you to understand it's not about what you see going on in this world. Yes, I am happy and grateful for anyone who may get promotion or who may get the best bite of the apple per se, or living the best of their life. But if he and she do not know or do not have a true relationship and understanding of who Jesus is, and have a relationship with Almighty God, then you might as well be happy. You might as well go and have the best of your life, because when life is over down here, and believe me, it will be one day. For some, sooner than others. The Bible is clear where our final destination will be for eternity. And so I want to answer these questions. I want to answer how Jesus said to Peter. Turn in your Bibles, digital or book, to the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 20, verse 1 through 16. That is the 20th chapter, verses 1 through 16. And here it says, for the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is a householder that went out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard. 2, and when he had agreed with the labor for a penny a day, he sent them into his vineyard. 3, and he went out about the third hour and saw others standing idle in the marketplace. 4, and said unto them, go ye also in the vineyard, and whatsoever is right, I will give you. And they went their way. 5, and again, he went out the 6th and 9th hour and did likewise. And about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing idle, and said unto them, why stand ye here all day idle? 7. They said unto him, because no man had hired us. And he said unto them, go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right, that ye shall receive. And so when, verse 8, so when evening was come, the Lord of the vineyard said unto his steward, call the laborers and give them their hire, beginning from the last unto the first. 9. And when they came that were hired about the 11th hour, and received every man that penny or pence. There are those, but when the first came, they supposed that they should have received more, and they likewise received every man a penny or a pence. 11. And when they have received it, they murmur against the good man of the house. 12, saying, these last have wrought but 1 hour, and thou hast made them equal unto us, which have bore the burden and the heat of the day. 13. And he answered one of them and said, friend, hear this now, I do thee no wrong. Did not thou agree with me for a penny? 14. Take that what thine hast, and go thy way, and I will give unto this last even as unto thee. 15. Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with my own? Listen to them. Is thy eye evil because I am good? You see, verse 16. So the last shall be first, and the first last. For many be called, but few been chosen. Now I'm going to look at this parable verse by verse. First, it says in the first verse, for the kingdom of heaven is like unto a man that is an householder, which went out early in the morning to hire laborers into his vineyard. You see here, Jesus begins his parable talking about a householder or a house owner or a landlord. It's another word we can use. This particular landlord had a vineyard on his land, and that is how he supported himself. The parable is set during the season of the year when the grapes have ripened on the vine. And the moment it is ripened, it had to be picked right at the height of its ripeness. You see, the grape harvest is an urgent thing. It must be done, my brothers and sisters, in the very narrow window of time after the grape have reached their peak and before they begin to decline. Because of this, the harvest often require an influx of extra workers, you see. Such is the case here in this parable. The man goes out early as the day is getting ready to break and seek out laborers, those who need work, those who want to work, those who have to have work to support their family would gather in the marketplace in the wee hour of the morning, and those who need to be the one hired for the day as laborers, there they go into the market, and there the landowner seeks them out. Our landlord or landowner went out early, because the early one went, the more liberal and the more liberty they had to pick the very best workers. If he had waited until later, then someone else would have already hired the very best workers. The thing about these workers is that none of them were gainfully employed. They had no regular job. One might think of them as impoverished. They had no other source of income except this one. Every day they went to the marketplace hoping to get hired for a day wage. This was the only way they could feed their family. There in verse 2, it says, or stanza 2, that when he had agreed with the laborers for a penny a day, he sent them to his vineyard. In other words, when the landlord got to the marketplace, he quickly found and hired suitable laborers. He came to an agreement with them that they would work for a penny a day. The penny here it is, I said pence because it's called into the old King James. Here in the Greek is called a denarius. A denarius. That we talk, the denarius was somewhat like our penny. It had some value, but it was not the best value of coin. It is the standard wage for a day's work during that time. So there is nothing extravagant about the initial deal. It was a full day's labor for a full day's pay. Verse 3 and 4 says, and he went out about the third hour and saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and said unto them, go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right I will give you. And they went their way. Again, the story now skipped ahead about 3 hours. The landowner had decided that the task at hand is greater than the ability of the working crew that he has hired that morning. So he goes back into the marketplace, and there he hired more people. Jesus said that he went at about the third hour, which means that the third hour after the sunrise. If those of you are not accustomed to Jewish day, the day begin at 6 a.m. and conclude at 6 p.m. That is nighttime for the Jews. So if it's 6 a.m., 9 o'clock is when he went back out into the marketplace. It was half over the midday, which was the 6th hour, and he went back out again, and there he found more, and he sent them, and it was completely spent at nightfall, which is the 12th hour, assuming I'll be around the 6th in the morning to the 6th in the evening, like I said. There, my brother and sister, the third hour was 9 o'clock, and so at the midday, the landowner returned to the marketplace, see more men standing around, hire more workers, and when he get there, he find man standing, and he talked to them, and they come to an understanding, and they were hired, and they went into the vineyard. Perhaps they came to the marketplace late and missed the early landowners' appeal to work. That comes, and they're hoping to find someone just to hire them. They may not get a full day wage, but they'll get something that they can give and feed and put on the table for their family. The reason why I'm taking my time, because we got a nation of ungrateful people who do not realize how much God is and has been blessing the United States of America and the world. Our world is getting darker and darker, and there are folks walking around as if they do not know walking around as if they do not know that the hands of God is against the world now. And so here Jesus is conveying to you and I through this parable that he comes constantly seeking us to come, get right with him, learn of him, so that he may help us to find the true meaning for our lives before it gets dark, before it gets too late, if we get too old and we are now cut off. But in the story, they are here now, and they are hoping against hope that they can find someone who will hire them for a partial day wage. God, what Jesus is trying to convey to you and I, regardless of where we at right now in our soul salvation, God is beckoning us to come home, calling unto us to come from out of the darkness that we find in our lives, the constant negative thumping, feeling, pain, rejection, hurt, disappointment, loneliness, hatefulness, rage, jealousy, because you see others seem to have the best of life and you struggling to try to understand why life have dealt you such a hard hand, and every day you wake it seems like you're only drinking sour lemonade. Our landlord in the story hired these one who came late. He simply directs them to go into the vineyard and promise them that they also will receive whatever is right. In other words, my beloved, he will pay them a fair wage. For us today, Jesus is showing us that God the Father will always do right by us, even when we don't do right by him. Though the landlord didn't specify exactly what that meant, the worker probably expected him to pay them the right portion of the denarius for the amount of work that they would be doing, which is about 3/4 of the denarius. Verse 5 say, and again he went out the 6th hour and the 9th hour, and likewise he did the same. He saw men standing around, bid them to go into his vineyards and to help out. And as the story unfolds, the landlord now sees these people working, who now understand that there are not more men standing in the marketplace who may have been passed over for whatever reason. They're there. Despite them being there, he needed them to go and to work to make sure that he can get all his grapes picked at the right time so that none will perish, that he can get the maximum amount of profit for his product. This employer did the same thing. He struck an agreement with the workers, hired them at noon, hired them at 3. And then he went again and struck an agreement with those he hired at 9. And he would pay them whatever was right. Verse 6 said, and about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing idle, and said unto them, why standeth ye here all day idle? This is the part of the story that is important to Jesus. This is the part of the story that you and I need to hear and understand. It's at about the 11th hour of the day, which would have been around 5 p.m. in the evening or in the afternoon, some people would say, when there was roughly only 1 hour left to work. It is our landlord who returned to the marketplace and find others at the late time. And he went out and hired them. See, the amazing thing is that at that late hour, he still seeking additional labor to work in his vineyard. The grapes will not keep indefinitely. The window of harvest is so short. And apparently he felt that it was imperative to get them all out of the vineyard, to get them into the vineyard, to get all the grapes out of the vineyard. And he needed this extra influx of workers to make sure that the harvest is complete before it's too late. You see, by the time the working day was almost over, and it is somewhat surprising that they should still be potential laborers seeking employment. The fact that they were still there, perhaps, my brothers and sisters, indicates that they desperately needed work. At this time, however, before offering them a job, the landlord asked them why. Why they have been standing idle all day long. Verse 7, and they said unto him, because no man had hired us. He said unto them, then go ye also into the vineyard, and whatsoever is right, that shall ye receive. Their response is revertorially. What do you mean, Apostle? Their response was simply, no one had hired them. Many folks, we can point fingers at folks, at our parents, at our guardian, at life, even at God, and give excuse why our lives, for some, are so jacked. Why, for some, our lives are messed up. Why, for some of us, that we are filled with anger and resentment and bitterness because of the treatment. Why? This, my brother and sister, may give you and I some insight into what kind of people these were. They were probably social outcasts, the kind of people that no one wants to hire to do a job. However, even at this late hour of the day, the landowner is so ready to add extra labor that he is willing to hire the ones that no one else wants to hire, the ones who were rejected by other employers as unworthy to work. That's the class of individual that get hired at the 11th hour of the day. They were the undesirables. So he hires these men and he tells them to go work in his vineyard with the promise once again that he will pay them whatever is right. They cannot have expected that would be very much. At least they would hope to earn maybe 1/12 of a day's pay, because they would only have worked 1 hour of the 12 hours. Now the action shift to the workday end, and the master is no longer hiring. Instead, he is paying. And so in verse 8, when evening was come, the Lord of the vineyard said unto his steward, call the laborers and give them their hire, beginning from the last unto the first. And so the landlord called the manager or his butler. The Bible says steward, but I'll use the word butler to give it more clarity. Over and told him to give him the instruction that to get all the workers together, pay them from the ones who came last, and the ones who've been there first will be the last to get paid. You see, we cannot really get an indication of why he chose to pay them in this order. We do know that he is about to be very generous to those who were hired last. And perhaps, my brother and sister, he wanted those who were hired early in the morning to see his generosity and to know what manner of man he was. Verse 9 said, and when they came that were high about the 11th hour, they received every man a penny. Those who were hired last were paid first. Can you imagine the shockwave that goes throughout all the laborers when these humble men, the outcasts, those who were unfit to be hired in the prime hour of the day, receive a paycheck that is 12 times as large as they expect it to be? Immediately, the other worker recognized that their boss for the day is a very generous man. And no doubt they began to calculate what their pay will be based on his multiplying of the 12s. You see, those to whom a full day wages is owed probably now expect to receive about 12 denarii or a 12-day wage. However, they had completely misinterpreted what has just transpired. You see, the landowner is a generous man. He understands that the impoverished man that he has hired last, those that no one wanted, desperately needed a day's wage in order to adequately provide for their family. The payment is not evidence of an extravagant wage, is not evidence of a 12-fold bonus, which how the others interpret it. Rather, it is the evidence of the compassion of a landlord. He has determined to bless them or to be a blessing to them. To give every man who labored in his field a full day wage, no matter how short their tenure may have been. Verse 10, but when the first came, they supposed that they would have received more, and they likewise received every man a penny. The laborer, or the parable, I should say, skips over the laborer who were hired at 9, noon, and 3. However, we can surmise that those who work a quarter of the day and probably now expect a 3-day wages, but they receive a single day wage. This was not as big of a bonus as they probably expected, but it was still a bonus. Likewise, those who were hired at noon were expecting a 6-day wage, and those who were hired at 9 were expecting a 9 days wage, but they also received a full day wage. In each case, my beloved, the payment was a bonus. But even though they received a bonus, they were still a little disappointed because their bonus was not as large as the bonus that the first group received. Finally, my brothers and sisters, he came to the man who worked all day. They agreed to work a full day. Now listen to what I'm saying. They agreed to work a full day for a full day wage. However, after seeing everyone else, they received a bonus of some kind with their pay. They have forgotten the formal agreement that they made with their employer and now expect to receive more than a day wage. After watching the events unfold before them, these who were there hired from the early morning had their expectation have probably changed several times. When the 11th hour were paid 12 times and what was owed, then they would probably expect to receive a 12 days wage for their 12 hours of labor. However, by now, I believe they have seen the bonus diminish with each successful payment. It has seemed reasonable that they would expect some kind of additional bonus. For after all, everyone else had gotten what they perceive as a bonus, even if they have diminished in size from the beginning to the end. These workers would have reason within themselves that they have worked longer hours and done more work, so they deserve more pay. But it did not work out like that. They received only a single denarius. that what they agreed on. And what a strange pay structure. The longer a particular group work, the smaller the percentage of bonus they receive. And the first group gets no bonus at all. When you look at it as an hourly wage, like most of us do in our job, if they want us to work longer or past the time that we agree, then they have to pay us overtime or a bonus. The pay scale seems to be going down, according to these men, with each successful groups that worked in the vineyard. When you look at it as an act of grace, you see each laborer receiving the same amount, a full day's wage, regardless of how long they actually work. It becomes obvious that the landlord is generally concerned for the underprivileged in his society and as he determined that everyone who labors in his field, regardless of the amount of time they put in, will receive a full day's wage. His generosity, though yield some discomfort among his workers. Look at the 11th verse. And when they have received it, they murmur against the good man of the house, instead of rejoicing that they receive a full day's pay, that they have received a full days of work. They came against the employer. They begin to murmur. They begin to feel like they have been mistreated or they wasn't dealt fairly. No doubt, the one who murmured the loudest were the one who had worked the full 12 hours, but have received the same wage as everyone else. Verse 12 said, saying, these last have wrought about 1 hour, and thou hast made them equal unto us, which have bore the blunt of the heat of the day. Their complaint, my beloved, amount to this. They have been treated fairly. The latecomer worked 1 hour, and so their contribution to the work in the vineyard was minuscule. But when it came to pay, they were made equal to those who have done most of the work. They complained not just about the time that they spent working, but the condition under which they had to work. They had to work through the heat of the day. And while the laborers who were paid the most graciously worked only a single hour, which is in the coolest part of the day. But surely, these who have done a full day's work, had sweat under the blazing sun, deserve to be paid more than those who did not. It simply wasn't fair, according to them. But the whole parable boils down to the fact that they were jealous. Hear me now. Jealous of what had been given to those others. They envy the generosity of the landowner to the people who had no merits. It is this sense of entitlement That is the point of this parable. It is what lies behind Peter's initial question. Don't we who have labored longer deserve something extra? Verse 13, but Jesus answered one of them, and said, friend, well, let me not take out Jesus, because Jesus is speaking, but in the text, he used the landowner. And so let me put it this way. But the landowner answered one of them and said, friend, did I not agree? Or let me say the way they said. But he answered one of them and said, friend, I do thee no wrong. Cast not thou agreed with me for a penny? That's the King James. I read it in the King James version. The landlord simply points out to them, to the original agreement. Friend, he says, I have done no wrong. Were not you paid exactly what we agreed on? Did not we made a deal? You upheld your end, and I have upheld mine. Come on, Jesus. The fact that he was more generous with the other worker did not give these men any right to expect more than they had initially agreed to. They have been treated fairly. Verse 14. Take that thy is and go thy way, and I will give unto this last, even as unto thee. It was his right, he's saying, to bless whomever he wants to bless. The latter half of the verse is important. There's a phrase in the Greek, I want to give. I want to give. The landowner have chosen to be generous to those who had no expectation of generosity. He wanted to bless those who were looked over and rejected by everyone else. This is what grace is about, my beloved. It is God expressing his goodness in my life and your life by giving you and I more than we ever deserve. I didn't earn this, and neither did you. We don't want to be held accountable for what we did not right in the sight of God. But for some strange reason, my Lord, for some strange reason, we want our good deeds to benefit us. We want to hold God to blessing. We want to hold God to blessing we didn't earn by citing these things that we have done or the years of service that we have given unto him. My Lord. The 15th verse says, and it is lawful unto me to do what I will with my own. Is my eye only evil because I am good? The landlord finished his argument with two questions. Is it not my right to spend my money however I feel it or see fit to do it? He didn't shortchange anyone. He simply exercised a little extra generosity on some. God doesn't answer us for the blessing he pours out on us. Every good thing in our lives comes from him. Every blessing in our life is a result of his grace. How in the world could we ever sit in judgment over the blessing of others when we too have received that which we did not deserve. To me, this is heartbreaking of a parable. The second question about an evil eye is pointed at one own envious greed. The landlord has been both fair and gracious, but all they can see is that someone else receives something greater measure than them. The generosity of the landlord or the landowner has made them jealous. Jealousy, my brother and sister, is always ugly, particularly when you have received so much and are jealous of someone simply because they receive a little more than you. Finally, in verse 16, so the last shall be first, and the first shall be last, for many be called, but few are chosen. You see, we often fall into some trap that Peter fell into. We want to think of things in terms of ranks, as if we should somehow earn the blessings of God. We want to point out our own faithfulness while overlooking failures and insist that we have somehow earned the blessing of God. That simply isn't the case. Though God treats no one unfairly, he deals with many far more leniently than we deserve. God alone, in his sovereignty, freely choose whom he will bless. And in and in what way he will bless them. The point I am making is simple. The last will be first, and the first will be last. Those who deserve it least will be elevated. Those who think they deserve it the most will miss out on the greatest blessing of the kingdom. And he does it all out of his great grace. He doesn't owe you and I any explanation. Our ruffled feathers may get ruffled. At the heart of the matter, we are just like Peter. It doesn't seem fair to us that those who deserve less receive more. However, our reasoning is flawed. When we begin to think that way, we have convinced ourselves that we have somehow earned God's blessing when we have not. Every good gift that he has given us has been an act of his grace. And we who have so richly received his grace has no right to stand in judgment over the one who has blessed us simply because we think he has blessed other in a greater measure. The point of the parable is simple. We made an agreement with the master. It is his vineyard, and you and I have agreed to work in that vineyard. Your contract or your contract with him and my contract with him is between you, him. It is none of anyone else's business what kind of agreement he made with someone else. Just like the landowner, God has the right to bless whomever he chooses to bless. And if he bless everyone around you tenfold, but doesn't bless you, you can't never say that he owes you a blessing. He owes you no more than what you initially agreed to when you came to work for him. The point of this parable is to abolish that sense of entitlement. My brothers and sisters, God wants to treat us fairly. Indeed, if God is our God, then we are blessed. Well, my time has come and gone. I thank you for yours. Until next time, this is Wisdom of the Word. May the Lord richly bless you is my prayer. Goodbye.